You don't realize it at first. It happens quietly, almost shamefully. You walk into a room full of strangers and feel lighter, calmer, freer. Like your mind can breathe, like your shoulders finally drop to their natural position. But then you enter a room with your own family, people you've known your entire life, and something inside you tightens. Something folds inward. Something becomes small again. You feel watched, evaluated, expected. You feel yourself slipping into a version of you that doesn't exist anywhere else. Most people assume the safest place in the world is home, but that's not true for everyone. Some people feel safer around strangers, people they've never met, than the ones who raised them. And if you're one of those people, you've probably never admitted it out loud. Not because you're afraid of judgment, but because you don't even know how to explain it. How can someone feel more comfortable with someone they just met than with the family they grew up with? How can conversations with strangers feel effortless, but talking to your own blood feels heavy and rehearsed? It starts with something subtle: identity. Around strangers, your identity is undefined. You're not trapped in a role. You're not the quiet one, the responsible one, the problem solver, the black sheep, or the sensitive one. You're just a person, a blank canvas. Someone with potential to be anything. There are no expectations, no history, no unspoken rules. A stranger doesn't know who you used to be. They only see who you are right now. Family, on the other hand, often sees a version of you that you outgrew long ago. Some people spend their whole lives being cast in roles they never agreed to play. Roles assigned to them as children, roles based on misunderstandings, old memories, or one single moment that defined them forever in the eyes of the people closest to them. And once a family assigns you a role, breaking out of it feels impossible. You become locked in that version, even if you've changed completely. So, when you're around strangers, there is freedom. When you're around family, there is pressure. Pressure to behave. Pressure to stay small. Pressure to avoid disappointing anyone. Pressure to meet expectations they never even had to explain out loud. Some people feel safer around strangers because strangers don't carry emotional consequences. When you talk to someone you don't know, there is no weight behind your words. There is no risk of triggering old wounds or repeating old patterns. You don't have to walk on eggshells or measure your tone. You don't have to protect their feelings. You don't have to protect your own. Strangers don't have the power to hurt you in the ways family can. Family has emotional leverage. Strangers don't. And here's the part most people never understand. For many, safety isn't about familiarity. Safety is about lack of threat. A stranger cannot shame you with your past. A stranger cannot compare you to your siblings. A stranger cannot remind you of failures you've spent years trying to forget. A stranger cannot tell you who you're supposed to be. Family can. Family often does. So you feel safer talking to someone who knows nothing about you because there is no emotional minefield beneath the surface, no memories waiting to explode, no hidden resentments, no layers of history with sharp edges. When you speak to a stranger, you're meeting fresh. When you speak to your family, you're stepping into a museum of old versions of yourself. And in that museum, the walls echo with expectations. Some people feel safer around strangers because they learned early on that family is where they must perform, where they must be perfect, or silent, or compliant, where they must hold the peace, where they must avoid conflict at all costs. You learn to shrink yourself to keep harmony. You learn to hide your emotions because your feelings were too much. You learned to stay quiet because speaking up caused problems. You learned to fit into the mold because breaking it meant punishment, not always physical, but emotional, subtle, painful. And when you grow up performing, being around strangers becomes relief. Because you don't have to perform anymore. You get to be real, ironically, around the people who know nothing about you. There's another layer to this: space. Strangers give you emotional space that family never did. Space to speak, space to think, space to exist without judgment. Around family, some people feel suffocated, not because their family is cruel, but because their identity is too tightly controlled. You're not allowed to grow, to change, to evolve. You're supposed to stay the same person you were years ago. But around strangers, your evolution is visible. They see who you are today, not who you were then. And that creates a kind of psychological safety that's rare and fragile. There's also the simple truth that strangers have no power to shape your self-worth. If a stranger misunderstood you, it doesn't break you. If a stranger judged you, it doesn't define you. But if a family member does it, it cuts deeper, lasts longer, and shapes your self-image. That risk alone makes family interactions feel dangerous for some people, even if no one intends harm. For many, strangers are emotionally safe because the relationship has no stakes. Family is emotionally dangerous because everything is at stake. Some people feel safer around strangers because they grew up parenting their parents. They became the ones who listened, who soothed, who carried the emotional load. They were the strong ones long before they were ready. When you're raised to be responsible for everyone else's feelings, home doesn't feel like rest. Home feels like work. And talking to strangers, where you don't have to manage anyone, save anyone, or fix anything, becomes relief your body instantly recognizes. But the deepest reason people feel safer around strangers is this: strangers have no script for you. Family has memorized every line of your role. Strangers let you rewrite yourself. Family keeps handing you the same outdated script. When you sit with a stranger, you're free to be the person you've become. When you sit with family, you're dragged back into the person you used to be. And that's why for some people, strangers feel comforting, while family feels overwhelming. It's not hatred. It's not trauma alone. It's not avoidance. It's identity suffocation. Being around family means stepping into a box. Being around strangers means stepping into the world. You're not broken for feeling this way. You're not disloyal. You're not cold. You're not strange. You're someone who learned that safety doesn't come from history. It comes from freedom. Freedom to be real, freedom to be seen, freedom to breathe without shrinking.
When you feel safer around strangers than your own family, you begin to notice something else. Your relationships follow the same pattern. You open up easily to new people, but shut down around the ones who have known you the longest. You share pieces of yourself with someone you meet in a cafe, a coworker, or a distant acquaintance, not because they're special, but because the connection carries no weight. There is no emotional cost. They have no expectations. They won't weaponize your vulnerability later. They won't turn your honesty into a story at a family gathering. With strangers, your truth feels safe. But with family, vulnerability feels dangerous, not because they intend harm, but because history sits between you like a third presence. Every past mistake, every misunderstanding, every argument, every moment you were misunderstood, it all becomes part of the emotional landscape you must walk through. And so you walk carefully. You measure your words. You speak strategically. You share less. You reveal nothing that can be used against you later. Silence becomes your shield. even when you crave connection. Psychologists call this role-based identity locking. Once a family sees you in a specific way, your attempts to change are often met with resistance, even subtle resistance, a raised eyebrow, a dismissive comment, a reminder of how you used to be. For years, your brain has learned, strangers let me grow. Family pulls me back. This is why some people feel their most authentic selves outside their home, in the world, among people who have no script for them. It's not rebellion, it's not detachment, it's the hunger to exist without history weighing down every interaction. But this paradox runs deeper. For many, the family environment triggers a psychological regression. You step back into the role you had as a child, even if you've outgrown it. A mature, emotionally intelligent adult suddenly becomes quiet, withdrawn, hesitant. You revert not because you want to, but because your nervous system learned long ago that speaking freely in this environment wasn't safe. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. You might also feel watched, not literally, but emotionally. Family members often carry strong ideas of who you are. They notice changes, they question shifts, they comment on your growth. Strangers, on the other hand, simply witness you. They don't question your evolution. They don't compare you to who you were 5 years ago. They accept the version you present today. And acceptance without history can feel like oxygen. Another reason you feel safer around strangers is that you can withdraw without consequence. If you don't respond to a stranger's message, the world doesn't crack open. If you leave a conversation early, no one accuses you of being ungrateful or distant. If you set boundaries, they're accepted. But with family, withdrawal carries emotional consequences. Silence is noticed. Distance is questioned. Privacy is considered an act of rebellion. Boundaries are interpreted as personal attacks. So your nervous system chooses the environment with the least emotional risk. And ironically, that environment is with people who barely know you. There's also the weight of loyalty. Family conversations carry the burden of expectation, the belief that you owe them your time, your presence, your energy, even when you have none left, even when you're exhausted or overwhelmed. With strangers, you owe nothing. You are not required to perform, protect, or please. That lack of obligation feels like safety to someone who has spent their entire life carrying the emotional load of others. Some people feel safer around strangers because they grew up with unpredictable emotional climates. One day calm, one day explosive, one day loving, one day distant. This inconsistency teaches the brain a painful lesson. Familiar people can't always be trusted. Predictability is what feels safe, not history. Strangers are predictable in their neutrality. They have no emotional power over you, no influence, no leverage, and that neutrality feels safer than the unpredictable emotional patterns you learned at home. Then there's the truth most people never say out loud. Sometimes, strangers simply see you more clearly. Family can be blinded by their own memory of you. They think they know you entirely, but they know a younger version, a static version, a version preserved in time. Strangers see your current emotional state, your present personality, your real energy. They respond to who you are today, not who they think you are. And that creates a connection that feels deeply validating, not because the stranger understands your soul, but because they allow you to show your soul without built-in expectations. But the paradox doesn't stop there. If you feel safer around strangers, you probably also struggle with intimacy. Not romantic intimacy, emotional intimacy, true closeness. Because closeness comes with risk. The risk of being known, the risk of being seen deeply, the risk of being misunderstood by someone whose opinion matters to you. Vulnerability feels easier when the stakes are low, harder when the stakes are everything. This is why some people build friendships where they share momentarily, but withdraw when things get too deep. They are fluent in surface vulnerability, deep enough to feel connection, but not deep enough to create emotional danger. The safest relationships are those with a controlled distance, enough familiarity to feel understood, enough space to feel safe. Some people mistake this pattern for detachment or coldness, but it's not. It's fear. Not of love, but of being reshaped by someone else's view of you. This fear often comes from childhood environments where identity was not chosen, but assigned, where emotional expression was monitored, where your needs were secondary, where your feelings were misunderstood. This teaches a person that being known too deeply is dangerous. So strangers become safe havens because they cannot trap you in an identity. They have no emotional history to use against you. They don't mirror back the old wounds you're trying to heal. And here's the haunting part. People who feel safer around strangers often become incredibly good at reading other people. They develop hyper-awareness, emotional intuition, and observation skills. They can sense warmth, danger, intention, and energy within seconds. This comes from living in environments where reading subtle emotional cues was essential for survival. Those skills protect you with strangers, but with family, those same skills overwhelm you. You see everything: the judgment, the tone, the expectations, the unspoken rules. You see too much to feel relaxed. Yet despite all this, the longing doesn't disappear. You still want closeness, you still want connection, you still want to be seen without armor, but you want it with safety. And for many, safety has never been found inside their family walls. Here is the most important truth. Feeling safer around strangers doesn't mean you're broken or damaged. It means your nervous system learns to associate familiar with pressure and unknown with freedom. It means your identity was shaped by environments that restricted you. It means your spirit recognized early on where it could breathe. Strangers didn't save you. Freedom did. But there is hope in this pattern too. Because once you understand why your nervous system responds this way, you gain the power to change it. You can build relationships based on safety, not history. You can create spaces where you don't have to perform. You can form chosen family, people who see you fully and hold you gently. You can teach yourself slowly that familiarity doesn't have to feel like confinement. One day, you may realize something powerful. You never wanted distance. You wanted safety. And safety is not about who you know. It's about where your soul can finally breathe without shrinking.